Okay, before you go into the comments and tell me, Flip, you're wrong. Uh, what are you talking about? Hear me out for a second, okay? I just watched A Quiet Place Day One. Now, prior to this, I had never watched A Quiet Place One or A Quiet Place Part Two. I already watched them. I watched them afterwards, and let me tell you real quick. I believe that A Quiet Place Day One should have been the only one. Here's what I mean. This is the thing. Even though Part 1 and Part 2 were great movies, okay? They were enjoyable experiences. I did enjoy myself. That being said, I, and apparently a lot of other people online, about these two specific movies, we had problems, be it with it just didn't make sense, right? And even if you think about it from a human perspective, right? Like, of course you want to be silent. Of course, you try your best to be silent. But the thing is, that's just not only not a smart solution, but also that's just not a way of living. There is no sustainable reason, or it just doesn't make sense for you to actively try to be in silence for the rest of your life. It's not viable. At some point, and you see it in the second one, where even like the raccoons were naturally just making sound. So there are a lot of things that cause sound aside from you, just you. So no matter how careful you are, eventually something is gonna make a sound, and you're just gonna, which of course, also A Quiet Place, The Road Ahead, which is a video game that's coming out. In the trailer, you get to see her. There's this very emotional scene where she gets to see that she's actually pregnant, and she takes that as a very, very bad um, moment, because of course she knows that birth makes a lot of noise. And even if you manage to go through all of that, babies throughout the entire time, they just make a lot of noise, which is something that we do get to see in A Quiet Place Part 1 and Part 2. Um so it's just not, and this is the thing. Okay, for them to have made it to 472 days, 474, because it ends at around 475 in Part 2. It doesn't make sense to me that humanity, okay, collectively never actively found a solution to this problem. In fact, if you get to see, it's not similar, but there is an alien invasion that actively attacks the whole world. This being Parasite the Maxim and Parasite the Grey. Now, if you watch Parasite the Maxim, Parasite the Grey, if you do some math and you check out some of the things that happen in those series, it takes them around exactly the same time for the problem to be completely resolved. In fact, in Korea, in like the first 2 months, they already have a parasite locked up and used as a weapon itself. Um, they already have a whole task force dedicated to this. Around 3 months in deep in, the entire task force has of Japan has already started to be able to to combat this problem in a very, very efficient way, up until Goto comes around and does his thing. Then it's a whole problem. But humanity surpasses it, and this should be no different. In fact, in I almost said Parasite, in A Quiet Place Part Two, um, the deaf girl actively uses her earpiece to combat this problem herself, and it just doesn't make sense to me that humanity didn't discover that earlier. In fact, they have been actively using sound in order to stay safe. They use it with the waterfall. The fact that the abbots didn't establish their home near the waterfall doesn't make sense to me. And also, okay, from a writing perspective, let's say this makes sense. Okay, so why don't the aliens attack the waterfall? And you may be thinking, oh, because they can't swim. That's actively a more enough of a reason for them to stay on water. And if we go to a Quiet Place Day One, this is a problem that any of these problems that we get to see which are on day 472, day 89, day 474. These aren't things that shouldn't be happening on anything else than on day one, which is things that we get to see. And not only that, but they have already started to use these problems to start living again. So, for example, during day one, they start using um, the lightning and the rain to be able to let out some of the pain and screams. At some point, they need to bolt down a door, so they use the thunder to kick it down. And you know, in this movie, well, in the other movie, the whole objective is to survive. They're just trying to survive, and as I said earlier, that it's just not a way to live. In part one and part two, it's just not a way to live. The whole objective is just to survive and have a family. But on day one, on A Quiet Place day one, the whole objective here, it's two things because there are two main characters. Number one is for the girl to get some pizza.
Where are you going?
I'm going to get pizza.
I think the world might be ending.
And I think there's just life of fantasies sitting up there that's the last it'll ever exist. And I'm going to get it.
It just is really, it's just, I love that objective because it's so mundane in a world that's crumbling to the ground in less than 24 hours. She has wanted pizza, so she wants to get pizza. Um, and Eric just wants to help her because she saw the cat. Which, by the way, the cat unsung hero of the movie, but it doesn't make sense to me. Even though it's one of the sneakiest animals, it doesn't make sense to me that at no point did a cat meow and then the things destroyed her. In fact, the cat at one point gets lost into the crowd, and it should have been trampled over. Like, no matter how I see it, it just there are some mistakes that the humans in this movie made, but I feel like overall, even the military was using sounds and height and everything. They were just making very, very smart decisions. And in the end, of course, these two characters, Eric and the girl, I forgot her name. Eric and the girl, they, you know, they get to their destinations and they just want the pizza. And they actually, even though at some point they get to the place, and the place that they wanted to get to, the pizzeria, had burned down because of course it had burned down. They were using that place during the apocalypse, and then all of a sudden things start. So of course the oven was left turned on, and of course it burned down. It makes sense, but they actively found another place and started to. They played music. They started to have like a pretend moment. It was a very beautiful moment, and for me, it actually separated this from the other movie, where instead of trying to survive and not actually live, these people were living instead of trying to survive. She already knew she had cancer. She already knew she was going to die, which is at the end, she sacrifices herself to be able to let Eric escape. And it's actually of course the aliens can't swim, which is something that we do learn on the first film. But there are a couple things that, I mean, I think it was very smart for them to establish themselves on a boat. It's unfortunate that if you watch the second movie, you know that those boats, they didn't stay on those boats. They didn't move to bigger boats, which is what I would have done. I would have made a colony on a big ass boat and just, stay there. They moved to an island, which if you watch part two, you know, because Jin, I think his name is Jin. The in the second movie he's called um Islander Man. That's the IMDb description name. Um, he gets killed in that one. So we know that whatever happens in this one, because of that one, because part two exists, everything that happened in day one is meaningless. But I still feel like it had a lot of credence to it because they actually found, and even all the way to part two, they actually found a way to live rather than survive. and I in my mind, okay, I feel like by a year, it's essentially a year, 3 months, and 20 days. To me, it just makes doesn't make sense that humanity never caught on to some things. In fact, um, we got the Abbots. They have a whole basement when they have like, oh, we're trying to find a weakness and whatever. Which of course it turned out to be water, and it turned out to be sound. But I also, watching day one, I was thinking, why is it that they attack sounds that are caused by random things or by other people, but not by sounds that they make, that they themselves make. So if an alien falls down on top of a truck, and the truck, it causes a lot of noise because of course it destroyed it, why isn't that another alien comes over and attacks it? So I figured that the sounds that they make are actually a way to where, like, oh, they know, instead of having to go deal with that sound that is being made, another one of my species is already taking care of it. So again, another way to weaponize sound isn't to like make the feedback so that their head open up, but as a way to actively, every time you make a sound, right? If you had recorded the sound that they make, play that immediately, and that way no thing is gonna come over because they already know it's being dealt with. And the other thing is a sound that is constant. It seems to me that they don't react to it because they know there's not much we can do about it. So, for example, we never get to see them react to lightning. We never get to see them react to waterfalls, which is what I was saying earlier. Why is it that they don't attack waterfalls? It is because they know that sound's actively playing. All we have to really do is stay away, which is specifically what they also do with the pitching, ringing sound from the earpiece that the deaf girl has. So I just feel like humanity, military, whatever, anyone that actually actively deals with technology would have picked up on this, especially because in day one, even on day one, they already knew we have to contain the island, so they destroyed the bridges. We have to keep a height and play the sound so that the hordes of these monsters are separated. And so I feel like overall, day one did a really, really, and this is the other thing. Apart from the monsters being scary, I actually was not scared when I first heard and saw of the Quiet Place One, because when it's a monster that actively relies on sound, and in a movie that's so quiet, and this is why I was never scared watching the first one. Um, you want to be able to, not know what it is that's haunting you. So the monster would have been a lot more scarier if we couldn't see it. If it just like take out took out the things and we didn't get to see what it was. Because filling in the blanks with our mind, and we're terrified of something that we don't understand, we actively create something that's even more terrifying. But in day one, to me, it looks a lot scarier to see those things because they are actively a massive number. Whenever you see one of the helicopters passing by with sound, you get to see the horde of these aliens pass over like the Pamplona Bulls. So you get to see them just, like, actively go in hordes, and it's scary. It's actually scary whenever they actually show up. It's scary. I feel like these, because of their massive number, even that scene where you get to see them fall from the sky, dude, that is scary. So I I just feel like the Quiet Place 1 and A Quiet Place 2 dwindled that experience down because not only are they not scary to me, but there's just no cohesion with, just active thinking. Just I feel like this movie downplays a lot the capability of humans. So it doesn't seem believable to me that if this situation actually happened, that within the year it wouldn't have evolved. I just don't believe that the Abbotts wouldn't know the weakness, or anyone wouldn't know the weakness in more than a year. It doesn't make sense. There should have been task forces. There should have been active, I don't know, groups of people in a military level doing something against these beasts. And I would not be surprised if they had managed to capture something, one of them. Capturing is like the main thing when it comes to aliens in any movie, unless it's Alien, because it's their turf. But when it comes to our turf, when they invade, we usually in movies get one specimen, any specimen. I don't know. This movie doesn't make sense to me, and so these movies don't make sense to me because they one made a lot of sense to me in everything that happened, except once I watched part two, in which case the I don't know. But if they managed to make a part three, and this is where I feel like it would have been more like this. Part three or even part one should have been this way, where we have a a a a, a father like in Cloverfield Lane. Cloverfield Lane, it doesn't make a lot of like it's not very Cloverfield like, but I feel like this one could be like that, where like we have a bunker, we have a dad that actively doesn't want to make a sound and is just trying to survive. But then we have a daughter that actively knows that sound is probably the best way to combat them, and the dad just doesn't believe it. So it would be a clash of ideals. It would be like, oh, yeah, there's the Abbotts, of course, the way that they did it, which is we have to survive, and then the ideal of surviving isn't living. I need to be able to live, which is what Eric and the girl are doing. So if we manage to get a third film, I would absolutely love it if it was something like that. Because there is nothing more human than actively wanting to just be able to have a happy moments rather than just let survive during the storm. Because as opposed to what should be done, which is, oh, we're expecting for the storm to pass. The Abbotts know that the storm is never gonna pass, so that is not living. So yeah, that's the end of my rant. Okay, so I'll leave it to that, and I will see you guys on the next one. Don't hate me in the comments, and subscribe, and see you later. Bye.